The 2024 World Juniors are going to be absolutely nutty. When the initial rosters were announced, in my opinion, it was really going to come down to Sweden or the US for the gold medal. But these rosters have changed a decent bit and new players have been brought on, which changes everything. But what are these 2024 World Juniors going to look like? Who will ultimately win the gold medal in the end? Well, make sure you watch till the end as we go through every part of this World Juniors to see what's next in this tournament. And hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey prospect content just like this around the World Juniors and leading up to the NHL draft. Now, before we get into the big changes that will affect the World Juniors, let's first talk about today's sponsor in Underdog Fantasy. As you guys know, I love using Underdog, and it's the best place to make daily NHL picks and make watching NHL hockey that much more fun. This time around, we're going to go for another insured entry here, and I got three different players. I'm going to predict lower than 2.5 goals against for Devon Levi. He's been looking really good since his call-up. Jordan Kyrou, since the coaching change, has been on fire, so I think he's going to get higher than 0.5 assists, a nice little scorcher there. And then Noah Dobson, higher than 0.5 assists as well. He has been rolling recently. I think he's going to continue that versus Edmonton. And when you join me on Underdog Fantasy, when you're new, you'll get an 100% deposit match up to $100. Not something you'll want to miss out on. Plus, for all you new folks joining, you'll get a new customer special, a free pick'em to pair with any other player. And of course, Underdog is operational in 30+ US states, including Florida, Texas, California, and multiple Canadian provinces. So join me in making NHL hockey even more fun to watch by going to the description, clicking on the link, and using promo code GRAB. And of course, thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring today's video. Now, going back to the World Juniors and just how crazy this tournament can be, to me, I think especially this year, more than any other year, it is wide open for who could actually win gold. I think all of at least Sweden, Canada, and the US have gold medal quality teams, and I think it could come down to all three. Now, let's first take a look at Sweden here, and in my opinion, one of the most underrated teams of the tournament. Sweden, I think, is in a real spot to win a gold medal with just how mature the whole group is. You look at the forward group, first things first, and you got, of course, the Desjardins guys who were formerly with Desjardins, but you got Liam Ogren, Noah Ostlund, and Jonathan Lekaramaki. You could have a first line there that has some real scoring punch, some dynamic offense, as well as some solid defensive play in Liam Ogren. If all those three guys are healthy, that's a pretty sick first line. But I think what makes Sweden as well is just the depth throughout the roster, and especially at center, they have so many options. You, of course, have players like Philip Bystedt, who are first-round picks by the San Jose Sharks, who have progressed pretty well. David Edstrom, who is looking like a fantastic first-round pick by the Vegas Golden Knights, playing well in the SHL this year. You also got players like Oscar Pettersson, who have been unreal in the goal-scoring department, and I think could be real threats for Sweden as well. Otto Stenberg is a player that could have a big role with Sweden as well. But players like Felix Unger-Sorum and Tom Wahlberg, you just go down the list and there's so many quality options for Sweden. There's nobody that's going to be the best player in the tournament, but on the forward group, they got a lot of options and versatility, and I think that depth will really help them. And then you have the defense, which might be one of the best in the whole tournament. I mean, Sweden always produces great D, but you can see just the versatility here as well. I'm not really sure what the pairs would look like, but in terms of the draftees, you of course got Tom Willander coming on as an 11th overall pick. Hasn't had the greatest season with Boston University so far, but I think he could really light the world on fire on the junior level. You also got Axel Sandy Palika, who has been incredible in the SHL this year. He's going to be one of the D to really watch out for in this tournament. You also got players like Elias Salomonsson, second-round pick by the Jets, has been underrated for a while, continuing to progress well. You got Elias Pettersson as well, and the Canucks as well, just like Willander. You got players like Anton Johansson, draft picks of the Wings, Matthias Haviland, a draft pick of the Sharks as well. And just so many guys that bring a solid base level of play that to me, this defense is going to be consistent. It's going to be rock solid. And then you go on to Team USA, man. It is absolutely nasty. This is what The Athletic is projecting as Team USA's lines for this next year. You got Rutger McGroarty, Cutter Gauthier, Jimmy Snuggerud as the first line. Then you got the BC line with Gabe Perreault, Will Smith, and Ryan Leonard. Absolutely nasty top six with so many different threats, so many different options offensively. Then on the third line, you got Isaac Howard, Frank Nazar, and Gavin Brindley. That is fantastic, especially Brindley and Nazar, I think, are really going to go off. Then you got Quinn Finley, Danny Nelson, and Gavin Hayes as really that prototypical fourth line. But I think especially and with players like Danny Nelson, Gavin Hayes, even Quinn Finley as well, with the scoring touch that he has, it could still be a line that does produce offense if they need to. And I think that is the biggest thing. For the US, they cut a few players that I think offensively could have really been there. A player like William Whitelaw would have been fun. A player like James Higgins as well would have been incredible. But at the same time, they're building a roster that is here to win gold. And I think that whole lineup is just a whole forward group that can get the job done when it needs to, and as well have the defensive abilities that they need. And then you go on the defense, and holy friggin' crap, you got Lane Hudson, of course, as the number one, likely the defenseman of the tournament here, and I think there's very few players that could even touch Hudson for this spot. I think he's almost guaranteed to get defenseman of the tournament. You got him paired with Ryan Chesley, who could bring some solid defensive game. You got Zeeb Buom, who's looking fantastic in the 2024 draft, with Seamus Casey, unreal pair there. And then you got Drew Fortisseau of Eric Polkamp. Definitely a more defensive pairing here, especially Fortisseau I like quite a bit as a Rangers prospect as well. But you, again, see the versatility in this lineup. It's not just all offensive guys, not just all physical guys. They can bring a lot of different play styles that can fit in well. You, of course, have players like Hudson and Buom and Casey that can drive offense no problem. And then you got the goaltending and the extras. And to me, the goaltending for the U.S. might be the most underrated in the tournament. You got Jacob Fowler and Trey Augustine. And these are two goalies that I think are on a similar level. Even though I saw Jacob Fowler as the best goalie back in the 2024 draft, I don't think Trey Augustine is totally behind him. He's not too far off. And these two guys are going to be battling and being massive competition for each other, which we've already seen Jacob Fowler come out and say how much that has benefited him as well. Having that competition in net is going to get the best out of him. And if one player fails, you got a starter coming through that can be at a great level. And it's the best case scenario for the U.S. This is one of the best tandems they've had maybe ever. And then we move on to Team Canada. And as Sweden, as the U.S. were releasing their rosters, Team Canada was doing the same as well. Now, we knew heading in that Team Canada wasn't going to have the same superstar power that other teams might have, or at least compared to years past. They weren't going to have a player like Bedard or Stankoven or players on that level that are just truly elite. But the release of their rosters was still a little bit disappointing. And before we saw the big move for Canada, this was the Athletics projected lineup for Team Canada heading into the World Juniors. And you have a first line of Easton, Cowan, Conor, Geekie, and Matthew Savoie. A second line of Fraser, Minten, Macklin, Celebrini, and Jordan Dumais. Then a third line of Carson Rekha, Brayden Yager, Matthew Wood. And a fourth line of Owen Lard, Owen Beck, and Nate Danielson. Then you go to the defense, and again, the Athletics rosters. I think you'd see Oliver Bonk in this lineup at some capacity. I don't think he'd be a scratch, but what they have right now is Denton, Mateychuk, Maveric, Lamoureux, Jake Furlong, Tristan Luneau, Tanner Molendyk, and Noah Warren. And this kind of reminds me a little bit of Sweden's defense, where they got a lot of players who are solid. Players like Tristan Luneau, who are already in the NHL this year, I think are going to be pretty impactful. Denton Mateychuk in an offensive role, I think is going to be really interesting to watch. Tanner Molendyk has been incredible this year. I think he's going to get a lot of playing time as well. But I also think defensively, it might not compensate for the lack of star power on the offense. You're not going to have a player like a Lane Hudson on this defense, which I do think kind of hurts him a little bit. Denton Mateychuk is the closest, I would say, offensively, but even then, I think his defense leaves a lot to be desired. And then you go into the goaltending, which again seems to be a weakness for Team Canada, not really having anybody that's a clear-cut guy. You got Matthias Razio as maybe the most likely player to be the starter, but even then, he's not somebody that I would be completely confident in being one of the better goalies in the entire tournament. Goaltending, again, for Canada continues to be a question mark, but we'll see if it could be just okay enough to get by. But as you can see, this Canadian team heading into the last few days wasn't really inspiring too much confidence. I think a lot of people, and I even did a whole Twitter poll asking what you guys were thinking about for this tournament. And from 1,400 votes, you guys predicted the U.S. to win the gold medal, 46% to Canada's 35%. And again, the influence and the general public seem to be swinging other teams. And I've seen a lot of people as well predicting Sweden to win the gold medal too. So Canada's team just is kind of in that mix and not necessarily the favorite. But there was a big change and a big player coming out of this Canadian team over the past couple of days that might not be on the level of a Connor Bedard or anybody that they would truly, I think, need to separate themselves, but is still going to be a player that will bring some dynamic play onto this roster that I think they needed. And we would get the news here from the Bruins Twitter account saying that the NHL Bruins have assigned Matthew Poitras to Team Canada for the upcoming World Juniors. And this was humongous news. There was some debate over if Zach Benson would go to the World Juniors, and we would see Buffalo get more and more reluctant of that, especially over the past couple of weeks as Benson continued to get better and better at the NHL level. Losing Benson was huge, and it was also looking like Poitras would stay with the Bruins. Oh, I would say especially a week ago, we got word from Jim Montgomery talking about their development system for him, you know, leaving him healthy scratched a couple of games to give him more opportunity in the games he does play, to get him some rest, just like Leo Carlson with the Ducks. But as that development plan continued, it really didn't give him much more ice time. And again, we would start to see some more inklings, some more rumors about him going to the World Juniors, and ultimately it would be announced. This to me is really going to change Team Canada's roster. It's going to give them a #1 center here to immediately place on the roster, and it completely changes the entire tournament. This is a player that, again, might not fix that top end skill that I think Canada is lacking, but at the same time gives them even more stability, especially at center. And immediately placing as a first-line center for them, Poitras just being so underrated over the last year and continuing to show himself in the Bruins. This year, 13 points in 27 games. But I thought he looked good, especially at the start of the year. Even though he trailed off a little bit, he showed what he was made of and showed to be at an NHL pace. And bringing that on to the World Juniors, being a player that has already established himself in the NHL for this Canadian roster is humongous. He's going to bring that experience. He's going to bring that in the big moment type of game. And I think for the Canadians, especially offensively, Poitras is going to bring something that they don't have a lot of. The smarts and the decision-making. He is going to be a leader through and through. And especially the fact that you could put Geekie on the wing and have him in, I think, a more ideal role for himself, at least right now. It gives them so much more flexibility. And we were talking about with the U.S., with Sweden, the flexibility that they have, the depth that they would have, and this just adds on to it. You bring in, of course, a first-line center who is going to be just a game-breaking presence, but I think will be so good that he'll be so important by himself. And I think the fact that you're going to have so much more versatility, you drop a guy down in a lineup, and now you could probably place a player like a Lamoureux out of the lineup if you really need to. It just gives them so much more flexibility. You can put a player like Cowan now on the middle six, which I think is also more of a natural spot for him too. And it just creates so much more flexibility and really creates a better Team Canada lineup. Now, putting up my own lines and what I think Canada could do, especially with Poitras as that first-line center, I do agree keeping that top six, I think, brings some versatility, especially that second line. I think Minten and the defensive play he has alongside Celebrini and Dumais, who could just run off offensively, works quite well. I think that third line of Cowan, Yager, and Wood will be fascinating. Cowan potentially as the forechecker, Yager maybe as a finisher, Wood as another physical presence. And then you got that fourth line as well, which also is going to be pretty physical with Rutger and Beck. I like those two together quite a bit. And then Danielson as more of a frontline skater, maybe more of a play driver there. But to me, I think this just creates so much more balance. It puts a player like Cowan down on the middle six, a player like Rutger onto the fourth line, and it's pretty perfect now. You just have so many more options here. And again, if a player like Poitras were to disappoint, you could put Celebrini on the first line. It's just so many more options. And I think as they were kind of lacking in that department offensively, they were a little bit thin, but the Poitras ad is really going to give them some nice stability. But the way it changes the World Juniors for me completely is I, again, thought it was probably going to be between Sweden and the U.S. for the gold medal, but now the Poitras move kind of makes me rethink that. Maybe they're able to get some good defensive play out of this whole group and, again, win these games 3-1, which I think is what they're going to have to do with the, I guess, lack of star power. I would say lesser star power than the U.S., at least in the top six. This team is going to need to be a little bit more crafty, a little bit more defensively responsible, and Poitras is just going to add to that type of game. They're going to need to shut down play, but honestly, with Poitras being added in the roster they're building, I can kind of see it. I can kind of see them winning these games in a low-scoring effort, but honestly, I think it could actually work out for them. But I want to know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of Poitras being added to this Team Canada team? Do you think it changes them? Do you think they'll actually win the gold medal? And let me know your predictions for the World Juniors. Let me know who gets gold, silver, and bronze as well. As for predictions now for this World Juniors, I still don't know if it has completely changed anything for me. I think I'm still going to go #1 Sweden with that gold medal. Silver is going to go to the U.S. And I think Canada's going to get the bronze medal. But again, it could be any three of those, and you could change the order in any way possible, and I could see exactly what you're going for. It is wide open, this tournament. But let us know your thoughts down below on who wins the gold, the silver, the bronze. Is Canada good enough to get up to that #1 spot? Let us know down below. And of course, make sure you share the video for all the hockey, all the World Juniors, all the Canadian, USA, Sweden fans out there that you guys know online. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you want to see more videos just like this as we lead up to the World Juniors. And of course, I will see you in the next one. Actually, click on this card to watch all my hockey prospect talk right in one playlist. And I will see you in the next one. Have a great day and goodbye.